The peaceful Terry had lived among the stars for thousands of years. They were slim, fragile beings, with skin that shimmered like mother of pearl and eyes that could see spectrums of light humans could only dream about. Their cities floated in the clouds of their homeworld, Terris Prime, a marvel of engineering and beauty. But for all their knowledge and technology, they had never needed to fight. They had never faced true danger until the Voss came. The Voss ships appeared without warning at the edges of Tyeri space, black and jagged like shards of obsidian against the stars. They consumed everything in their path: planets, moons, space, stations. The Terry had no weapons that could stop them, no warriors to fight back. Within months, 3 of their 7 colony worlds had fallen, billions dead. In their archives, the Terry found hope. Ancient signals from a distant world called Earth, television broadcasts, radio shows, speeches about peace and cooperation. They had been studying these transmissions for decades, learning the languages, the cultures. The humans seemed like diplomats, creators of art and music. Surely they would help. "We have no choice," said Elder Quan, his frail hands trembling, as he addressed the Terry High Council. "We must call to Earth. We must ask for their aid before we are all gone." The message was simple. Help us. We are dying. On Earth, in the buried depths of the North American Defense Command, lights flashed on a console that had been waiting for this exact moment for over 50 years. "Sir, we've got a signal. Extraterrestrial origin. It's asking for help." General Moon watched the translation scroll across his screen, his face giving away nothing. "Get me the President." Within hours, the Security Council gathered. The alien message played on screens around the round table as military leaders and scientists debated what to do. "We can't ignore this," said Dr. Yu, the head of xenobiology. "They're clearly intelligent, peaceful. If these Voss are as dangerous as they say, then we need someone who knows how to deal with predators," finished General Moon. "I recommend Admiral Han Tae-sung." A chill fell over the room. Admiral Tae-sung's name carried weight. During the Resource Wars 10 years earlier, he had ended the Eastern Pacific blockade in just 3 days. No one talked about how he did it. The records were sealed. "He's too extreme," argued the Secretary of State. "We need diplomacy here." The President lifted her hand for silence. "The Tyri aren't asking for diplomats. They're asking for someone to stop an invasion. Bring in Tai-sung." Admiral Han Tae-sung arrived at the Pentagon 3 hours later. He was tall for a Korean man, with grey at his temples and eyes that seemed to see through walls. He reviewed the message in silence, then the intelligence reports that had been hastily assembled. "What do you think, Admiral?" asked the President. Tae-sung looked up from the files. "These Voss are predators. They hunt, they consume. You don't negotiate with a tiger that's eating your family." "So what do we do?" asked General Moon. "We don't send diplomats to fight predators," Tae-sung said, closing the classified briefing folder. "We send hunters." The room fell silent. "Can we even reach them?" asked the Secretary of Defense. Their signal came from over 30 light-years away. A thin smile crossed Tae-sung's face. "Madam President, I believe it's time to inform the Security Council about Project Starshot." The President nodded, and Tae-sung pressed his palm against a scanner. A new set of files appeared on everyone's screens. "For the past 30 years, he explained, we've been developing technologies based on theoretical physics most of the world doesn't know exists. We have ships, we have weapons, we've been preparing." Dr. Yu looked stunned. "How is this possible?" "The energy requirements alone would be immense," Tae-sung finished for her. "Which is why we built the lunar reactors disguised as mining operations. The public thinks we're extracting helium-3. In reality, we've been powering the biggest secret in human history." General Moon leaned forward. "How many ships, how many personnel?" 5 vessels fully equipped. 3,000 personnel on standby, all believing they're part of a classified space defense program. Which they are, just not in the way they thought. The President stood up, walking to the window that overlooked Washington. "And you believe we can help these aliens, these Terry?" Tae-sung's voice was calm, certain. "I believe we can do more than help them. I believe we can end this threat before it ever reaches Earth. Because make no mistake, if these Voss consume worlds, they'll eventually find us too." 48 hours later, Admiral Tae-sung stood in a hidden facility beneath the Sea of Tranquility, on the moon, looking at the sleek shape of the warship Nemesis. Around him, crew members were boarding, each selected for their skills, their resolve, and in many cases their capacity for controlled violence. Captain Lee Jun was the last to arrive, carrying his gear bag over his shoulder. "Is it true, sir? We're really going to fight aliens?" Tae-sung watched as technicians loaded the last of the weapon systems, technologies that would seem like magic to most people on Earth. "Captain, humanity has been waiting for this moment without knowing it. For all our talk of peace, we've been preparing for war among the stars since we first looked up at the night sky and felt afraid." The ship's engines began to hum, a sound like distant thunder. "The Tyre called for help," Tae-sung said quietly. "And they're about to learn what Earth sends when it's truly threatened." The 5 ships of Earth's secret fleet hung in the darkness of space, their hulls black against the starfield. Unlike the flashy spacecraft of science fiction, these were built for war, sleek, angular vessels designed to absorb rather than reflect light. At their center was the Nemesis, nearly twice the size of her sister ships, with weapon systems that had never been tested in actual combat, until now. Admiral Tae-sung stood on the bridge watching the stars streak by outside the viewports. The ships were traveling through what the scientists called folded space, a concept that even he didn't fully understand. All he knew was that it allowed them to cross vast distances in days rather than centuries. "Admiral," said his communications. "Officer, we're receiving an updated distress signal from the Tyre. 3 more of their colony worlds have gone dark." Tae-sung's face remained impassive. "Estimated time to arrival?" 48 hours, sir." He nodded. "Gather the command staff and team leaders in the war room." It's time they understood exactly what we're facing. The war room of the Nemesis was sparse and functional. Around the central holographic table stood the 20 men and women who would lead Earth's first interstellar war. None of them were ordinary soldiers. Commander Kim Do-young stood apart from the others, arms crossed over his chest. 6 years ago, he had been commanding a Black Ops team in a conflict that officially didn't exist. When things went wrong, he was the one who took the fall. He'd been in a military prison until Tae-sung had personally offered him command of the Nemesis ground forces. "Second chance," Do-young had said when Tae-sung came to his cell. "No," Tae-sung had replied. "This is humanity's first chance to survive what's coming." Across the table stood Park Sun-mi, small and unassuming, until you noticed her eyes, sharp, calculating, always moving. She had been developing weapons at a research facility in the Arctic when she pushed an experiment too far. The explosion had leveled the facility. The official story was that she had died in the accident. In reality, she had been recruited for this mission. "These are the Voss," said Tae-sung, activating the hologram. A 3-dimensional image of a creature appeared, insectoid with multiple limbs and a chitinous exoskeleton. Based on the Tyre descriptions, they're a hive species with distributed intelligence. They don't just want territory, they want to consume all available resources. "Including the Tyre themselves?" asked Sun-mi. "Especially the Tyre," Tae-sung confirmed. "They're apparently quite nutritious." Do-young leaned forward. "Tactics? Overwhelming force. They appear to have no concept of retreat or surrender. Their ships are organic technological hybrids, capable of regenerating damage." "So how do we kill them?" asked Captain Ryu, the commander of the heavy weapons team. Tae-sung looked at each of them in turn. "That's what we're going to find out. We have the theoretical knowledge. You have the practical skills. Together, we're going to save a species we've never met, and in doing so, ensure humanity's future among the stars." The Nemesis dropped out of folded space at the edge of the Tyre home system. What greeted them was a scene of devastation. The outer planets were already being stripped by massive Voss harvester ships, their surfaces crawling with the insectoid aliens. "Life signs on the 4th planet?" asked Tae-sung. "Faint readings, sir. A few thousand Tyre huddled in underground shelters. The Voss are digging toward them. Captain Ryu, prepare your team for planetfall. Sun-mi, I want your weapons hot and ready. Do-young, you'll lead the ground assault." Do-young nodded. "Time to hunt some bugs. Within hours, the first human boots hit alien soil. The landscape was beautiful, or had been before the Voss arrived. Now it was scarred with massive trenches where the invaders had been extracting resources. Du Young's team moved silently through the ruins of what had once been a Tyri city. The architecture was delicate, all soaring spires and gossamer bridges now crumbling and broken. "Movement ahead," whispered Sergeant Kang through the comm. "A lot of movement. Hold position," ordered Du Young. "Sunmi, you're up." Sunmi stepped forward, carrying what looked like a simple metal rod. "This is a sonic disruptor," she explained. "Theoretically, it should interfere with their hive communication. Whether it'll work—" She activated the device. A high-pitched tone, just at the edge of human hearing, emanated from it. The effect was immediate. The Voss soldiers, dozens of them, began to twitch and stumble, their movements becoming erratic. "They're disoriented," observed Du Young. "Ryu, light them up." Captain Ryu's team opened fire with weapons that fired not bullets, but concentrated pulses of energy, designed to penetrate the Voss exoskeletons. The aliens fell by the dozens, unable to coordinate their defense. "We found their weakness," said Sunmi with a grim smile. "Now we just need to scale it up." 3 days later, the Nemesis hung in orbit above the Tyri homeworld. The planet was still largely intact, though the Voss had begun their harvest. With the knowledge gained from the ground assault, Earth's fleet had systematically destroyed the Voss ships in the system. For the first time, Admiral Tae Sung prepared to meet the aliens they had come to save. He chose a small team, himself, Do Young, Sunmi and Ryu, to shuttle down to the Tyri capital. The Tyri waiting for them were tall, slender beings with luminescent skin and large, expressive eyes. They moved with a fluid grace that made humans look clumsy by comparison. Their leader, Elder Quan, approached the human delegation with obvious trepidation. You are the humans? The ones who received our message?" Tae Sung stepped forward. "I am Admiral Han Tae Sung of Earth. We received your call for help." The Tyri looked at the weapons the humans carried, at their combat armor, at the hardness in their eyes. We thought you would send diplomats, negotiators. We have studied your transmissions for decades, your music, your art, your speeches about peace." Du Young gave a short, harsh laugh. "You got those transmissions from our past. We've learned a few things since then." Elder Quan's luminescent skin pulsed with what might have been distress. "The Voss, they cannot be reasoned with. We tried. We offered them resources, territories." "You can't negotiate with predators," said Tae Sung. "You can only fight them." "But we are not warriors," said the elder. "We have never been." Tae Sung looked at the devastation visible through the windows of the Tyri shelter, at the smoking ruins of their once beautiful city. "So you called for help," he told the Tyri leader, his voice firm but not unkind. "Earth sent what you needed, not what you wanted." The elder's eyes widened. "And what is that?" Sunmi stepped forward, her hand resting on the weapon at her hip. "Hunters," she said simply. "You asked for help against monsters, so Earth sent its monsters." Du Young smiled, a cold expression that didn't reach his eyes. "And trust me, Elder Quan, compared to what's coming for the Voss, we're just the warm-up act." The Voss main fleet hung in space above the third moon of Tyri's prime, their massive ships clustered like a swarm of dark insects. They had never encountered resistance before. For thousands of years they had moved from system to system, consuming everything in their path. Species rose, fell, and were forgotten. The Voss remained. Until now. "All ships, maintain position," ordered Admiral Tae Sung from the bridge of the Nemesis. "Wait for them to commit." The 5 Earth vessels were tiny compared to the Voss armada, dark specks against the vastness of space. To any observer, the outcome seemed inevitable. The humans would be crushed. "They're moving, sir," reported the tactical officer. "Heading straight for us," Tae Sung nodded. "As expected, these creatures are predators. They've never learned caution." He tapped his comm. "All ships, execute pattern Sigma on my mark." The Voss ships surged forward, their organic hulls rippling as weapon ports opened. Energy beams lanced out across the void, reaching for the human vessels. "Mark," said Tae-sung calmly. The 5 ships, scattered in perfect coordination, each one firing thrusters in a different direction. The Voss beams hit empty space. Before they could adjust, the human ships had vanished. "Where did they go?" demanded the Tyree observer on the bridge. A scientist named Lee Jin-ho Tae-sung gave him a thin smile. "We're still here. We just turned off our heat signatures and engaged our absorption fields." He pointed to the tactical display. "The Voss rely on thermal and energy detection. Right now, we're practically invisible to them." The Voss ships had stopped, clearly confused by the disappearance of their prey. They began to spread out, searching. "Now," said Tae-sung, "Captain Han, execute attack pattern Delta." The smallest of the Earth ships, the Cerberus, suddenly appeared directly behind the largest Voss vessel. It fired a single projectile, not an energy weapon, but a physical object that embedded itself in the organic hull of the alien ship. "What was that?" asked Jin-ho. "A gift," replied Tae-sung, his eyes never leaving the display. The Voss ship shuddered. Then, slowly at first, but with increasing speed, it began to break apart. Not from an explosion, but from within, as if being eaten from the inside out. "Nanites," explained Tae-sung, "specifically designed to target the Voss biomechanical systems. They're being consumed by microscopic machines that replicate using the very materials of their ship." Jin-ho stared in horror as the massive Voss vessel disintegrated into a cloud of debris. You made this weapon specifically to kill them." "We made a dozen different weapons," said Tae-sung. "This is just the first test." He activated his comm again. "All ships report successful deployment. Move to Phase 2. On the surface of Teris Prime, the battle was more personal. Commander Kim Do-young led his team through the ruins of what had once been a Terry science complex. The walls were coated with a strange glistening substance, the residue left when the Voss consumed both materials and living tissue. "Motion up ahead," whispered Sergeant Kang, his rifle trained on a shadowy corridor. Do-young signaled the team to halt. "How many?" "At least 20. Maybe more." Do-young nodded. "Perfect. Sun-mi, you're up." "Park." Sun-mi stepped forward, her small frame belying her importance to the mission. She carried a device that looked like a metal sphere with glowing blue lines tracing its surface. "This is untested," she warned. "Theoretical only." "So are we," replied Do-young with a cold smile. "First humans to fight an alien war. Set it up." Sun-mi placed the device on the ground and activated it. The blue lines began to pulse, sending out waves of energy that were invisible to the human eye, but, according to their research, would be agonizing to Voss sensory organs. Screams, if you could. Call the high-pitched chittering screams, echoed from the corridor ahead. Voss soldiers stumbled into view, their multi-limbed bodies thrashing in apparent pain. "Fire!" ordered Do-young. The human team opened up with precise, controlled bursts. The Voss fell one by one, unable to coordinate or fight back effectively. "Hold!" shouted Do-young as the last few aliens retreated. "I want one alive." Sergeant Kang looked at him in surprise. "Sir?" "You heard me. We need intelligence." Using the sonic disruptor to keep it disoriented, they captured a Voss soldier, larger than the others, with markings that suggested higher rank. The creature was secured in a containment field and brought back to the Nemesis for study. In the ship's laboratory, Terry scientists worked alongside human researchers to understand the captured alien. Jin-ho watched with fascination as the humans methodically probed the creature's biology, behavior, and reactions. "They're not just fighting," he observed to another Terry scientist. "They're studying their enemy's weaknesses with each engagement." Sun-mi, who was adjusting settings on a neural scanner, overheard the comment. "Of course we are. That's how you win a war. You understand your enemy better than they understand themselves." The Voss commander, despite its alien physiology, clearly experienced pain as the humans tested different frequencies, compounds, and stimuli. Jin-ho found himself troubled by the clinical detachment with which the humans worked. "Is this necessary?" he asked quietly. "The suffering?" Sun-mi looked up from her work, her expression neutral. "Would you prefer we let them continue consuming your worlds? Your people?" "No, but There is no but, she interrupted. These creatures have destroyed thousands of your people. They would destroy us too, given the chance. Admiral Tae-sung entered the laboratory, reviewing the data on a tablet. What have we learned? Dr. Yoon, the chief xenobiologist, stepped forward. It's remarkable, sir. The Voss operate on a distributed neural network, a true hive mind. Each individual is connected to all others within a certain range. Information, sensations, even pain is shared. Tae-sung's eyes gleamed with sudden understanding. So if one experiences something, they all do to some extent, confirmed Dr. Yoon. And the higher ranking the individual, the stronger the connection. And we have a commander, said Tae-sung softly. One with strong connections to the rest of the hive. Du-young, who had been silently observing from the corner, stepped forward. You're thinking what I'm thinking, Admiral. Psychological warfare, nodded Tae-sung. If we can send the right signals through this commander, we can disrupt their entire command structure, finished Du-young. Jin-ho looked from one human to another, suddenly afraid. What are you planning? Sunmi was already programming new parameters into her equipment. We're going to send a message, she said. A very clear message. Within hours, the captured Voss commander was returned to space near the main Voss fleet, but not before the humans had implanted it with a specially designed neural transmitter. As the alien was drawn back into the hive, it carried with it sensations and images the humans had carefully crafted, visions of defeat, of human supremacy, of inevitable destruction. From the bridge of the Nemesis, they watched as confusion spread. Through the Voss fleet, ships began to move erratically, some even firing on each other. It's working, said Tae-sung. They're receiving our message. Jin-ho watched in horrified fascination. What exactly did you send them? Fear, replied Du-young. Simply, something they've never experienced before. Jin-ho shook his head slowly. My people believed you would come with words of peace, with diplomacy. Sunmi looked at him, her eyes hard. We didn't come here to coexist, she told the horrified Terry. Observer. We came to end a threat. As if to emphasize her words, the Nemesis fired its main weapons, energy beams that cut through the disoriented Voss ships like knives through paper. The rest of the Earth fleet joined in, systematically destroying the alien vessels one by one. This is just the beginning, said Tae-sung, watching the destruction with grim satisfaction. Now we take the fight to them. 3 months into the war, and the tide had turned. Where once the Voss had swept through Terry space unopposed, now they were in retreat. 7 major battles had been fought, 7 victories for humanity. The cost had been high. 2 of Earth's 5 ships damaged beyond repair, hundreds of human soldiers dead or wounded. But the Voss had lost far more. On the bridge of the Nemesis, Admiral Tae-sung studied the tactical display. Red markers showed confirmed Voss territory. Green showed liberated Tyeri worlds. The balance was shifting. Sir, said his communications officer, we're receiving a transmission from Earth. Priority Alpha. Tae-sung nodded. In my quarters. The face that appeared on his private screen was that of General Moon, his expression grave. Admiral, the Security Council has reviewed your progress reports. They're concerned. About what? We're winning. About your methods, Tae-sung, the biological agents you've deployed on the Voss colonies, the psychological warfare tactics. Some are calling it... Call it what it is, Tae-sung interrupted. Necessary. General Moon sighed. The Council wants to send a diplomatic team. They believe now that the Voss are weakened. We might negotiate a settlement. Tae-sung's face hardened. The only settlement is their complete withdrawal from this sector of space, at minimum, preferably their extinction. That's exactly the kind of talk that has the Council worried. You were sent to protect the Terry, not to exterminate another species. I was sent to eliminate a threat, Tae-sung replied coldly. That's exactly what I intend to do. After the transmission ended, Tae-sung sat in silence for a long moment. Then he called for Science Officer Baek Ju-won. Ju-won was the youngest. Senior officer on the Nemesis, brilliant but soft-spoken. He entered Tae-sung's quarters with obvious nervousness. You wanted to see me, sir? The bioweapon you've been developing. How close is it to deployment? Ju-won hesitated. It's ready for field testing, sir, but the potential side effects... Will it work against the VOS? Yes, sir. The pathogen targets their specific DNA structure. It should eliminate approximately 90% of their population within days of release. Tae-sung nodded. Prepare it for deployment. And Ju-won, this stays between us for now. The science officer looked troubled but nodded. Yes, sir. On Terris Prime, the Tyri were rebuilding. With human protection, they had begun to reclaim their homeworld, clearing away the destruction left by the VOS. But not all were comfortable with their saviors. In a hidden chamber beneath the restored council hall, a group of Tyri elders met in secret. The humans are as bad as the VOS, said Elder Sue, her luminescent skin pulsing with agitation. Have you seen what they did on the outer colonies? They released something, a weapon that melts the VOS from inside. Nothing should die like that. They saved us, argued another elder. Without them, we would all be consumed by now. At what cost? Asked Sue. They're changing us, teaching our young to fight, to hate. This isn't our way. Elder Kwan, who had first met the humans, spoke quietly. I have made contact with the VOS Overmind. It wishes to negotiate. Stunned silence fell. Over the chamber, you've what? Gasped one of the other elders. The VOS are sentient beings, said Kwan. Yes, they consume, it's their nature, but they can be reasoned with. The Overmind has proposed a treaty. They will leave Tyri space permanently if we provide them with synthesized nutrients they need. The humans will never agree, said another. Elder, then we don't tell them, replied Kwan firmly. Not until the treaty is signed. Present them with a fait accompli. None of them noticed the small device hidden in the corner of the room, quietly transmitting everything to the nemesis. Science Officer Ju-won sat in his lab, listening to the transmission with growing unease. The Tyri were planning to make peace behind the humans' backs. He should report this immediately. And yet, he had seen the effects of the bioweapon in simulations. Had watched virtual VOS writhing in agony as their cellular structure broke down. Was extinction really the answer? Wasn't peace better if it was possible? His hand hovered over the comm button. With a deep breath, he pressed it. Admiral, I need to speak with you. It's urgent. Within an hour, Tae-sung had heard the full recording. His face remained impassive, but Ju-won could see the cold fury in his eyes. Thank you for bringing this to my attention, Officer Baek. Sir, if I may, perhaps we should consider their proposal. If the VOS are willing to withdraw... They're not, Tae-sung cut him off. This is a delaying tactic. The VOS are losing, so they're trying to buy time. As soon as we leave, they'll return in greater numbers. But what if they're sincere? Tae-sung fixed him with a hard stare. Do you know why Earth sent this fleet, Ju-won? The real reason? To help the Tyri, sir. That was part of it. But the primary mission was to eliminate a threat before it could find Earth. The VOS consume everything they touch. Today it's the Tyri. Tomorrow it could be us. So what will you do about the peace initiative? Tae-sung's smile was cold. Nothing directly, but I think the VOS should learn about this meeting, don't you? The next day, as Elder Kwan and his allies prepared to depart for their secret meeting with the VOS representatives, their shuttle exploded on the landing pad. The official investigation concluded it was a faulty fuel cell. Tragic, but not suspicious. 3 days later, Admiral Tae-sung addressed the remaining Tyri Council. Your people have suffered greatly, he began. And there are those among you who believe peace with the VOS is possible. Let me be clear, it is not. He activated a holographic display showing a simulation of VOS expansion. Their biology compels them to consume, to grow, to spread. If we allow them to survive, they will eventually reach Earth and countless worlds in between. Elder Sue, who had survived the shuttle accident, spoke up. So you would exterminate an entire species? There must be another way. This isn't about saving just your species, Tae-sung explained to the Tyri leadership, his voice firm but not unkind. It's about ensuring no other species ever faces what you did. Sometimes to protect the many, the few must be sacrificed. And who decides who those few are? Challenged Sue. You? Earth? Reality decides, said Tae-sung. Nature decides. Predator and prey. The Voss chose their path long ago. That night, Commander Du Young's team infiltrated the main communications hub of the Tyri capital. With surgical precision, they inserted a virus into the system, one that would intercept and alter any messages sent to or received from the Voss. 2 days later, the last major Voss fleet gathered at the edge of Tyri space. A transmission was received on the Nemesis. "They're requesting to surrender," reported the communications officer, surprise evident in his voice. Tae-sung nodded. "Put it on screen." The image that appeared was strange, a shifting, flowing pattern of light that somehow conveyed meaning. The Voss overmind communicating directly. "We yield," came the translated voice, oddly melodic despite its alien origin. "Too much, death. Will withdraw. Seek peace." "They're surrendering," said Ju-won, who stood nearby. "This is what we wanted, isn't it?" Tae-sung's expression remained cold. "Transmit our terms." The communications officer looked up. "Sir, complete biological restructuring, the removal of their consumption instinct through genetic modification, supervised by human scientists." Ju-won stared at the admiral. That's their entire identity, their evolutionary purpose." "Exactly," said Tae-sung. "It's the only way to ensure they're never a threat again." The response from the Voss was immediate and angry, a burst of discordant light and sound. That needed no translation. "They refuse," said the communications officer. "As expected," Tae-sung nodded. "Launch the bioweapon." "Admiral," protested Ju-won, "they were offering to withdraw." "On their terms," said Tae-sung, "not ours." He turned to the young science officer. "This isn't a negotiation, Ju-won. It's an extinction event. Either theirs, or eventually ours." From the launch bay of the Nemesis, dozens of small unmarked missiles streaked toward the Voss fleet. Within hours, reports came in of ships drifting, of strange distress signals cut short. On the viewing deck, Sun-mi stood beside Tae-sung, watching as the Voss fleet slowly died. "Do you think we'll be remembered as heroes or monsters?" she asked quietly. Tae-sung continued to watch the silent destruction. "Neither. We'll be remembered as necessary." The Voss homeworld hung in space like a dark jewel, a planet of swirling blues and greens that might have been beautiful, if not for what lived there. The Nemesis and her remaining sister ship, the Thanatos, orbited silently, weapons primed. It had taken 6 months to reach this point, 6 months of brutal warfare across a dozen star systems. The bioweapon had decimated the Voss fleets, but not completely destroyed them. The survivors had retreated here to their origin world for a final stand. On the bridge of the Nemesis, Admiral Tae-sung studied the tactical displays with the same calm detachment he had shown since the beginning. If the constant fighting had worn on him, he didn't show it. "Final reports from ground teams?" he asked. Commander Du Young, his face bearing a new scar from a recent battle, stepped forward. "All in position, sir. The Voss have concentrated their remaining forces around their central hive structure. They've got civilians there too, if you can call non-warriors civilians in a hive species." Tae-sung nodded slowly. "And the device?" Park. Sun-mi, who had grown noticeably thinner over the months of war, looked up from her console, ready for deployment. One push of a button and the entire planet becomes uninhabitable to Voss biology. She hesitated. "It won't be quick, sir." Science Officer Ju-won, who had been unusually quiet since the failed Voss surrender attempt, spoke up. "Admiral, I've been analyzing the latest data from our deep scans of the hive. There's something different about the signals we're receiving." "Different how?" "The patterns have changed. It's almost as if—" He struggled to find the words. "As if they're evolving in response to us, adapting not just biologically but culturally." Tae-sung's eyes narrowed. "Explain." "The Voss we first encountered were pure predators, consume, expand, repeat. But these signals show something closer to fear, desperation, even possibly regret." "Regret doesn't undo their nature," said Du Young harshly. "Maybe not," replied Ju-won, "but what if they could change their nature?" The bridge fell silent. "The genetic restructuring," Tae-sung said softly. You believe it might actually work? I believe they might actually accept it now, said Ju-won. When everything is on the line, even the most fundamental aspects of identity can be negotiated. Tae-sung stood silently for a long moment, weighing options only he could see. Prepare a transmission to the hive. I want to speak to the Overmind directly. The image that appeared on the main view screen was unlike any they had seen before. Where previous communications with the Voss had been abstract patterns of light, this was a distinct form, an insectoid face with compound eyes that somehow managed to convey emotion. "You have come to end us," the translated voice said, no longer melodic but weary. "That depends on you," replied Tae-sung. "We offer a choice." He laid out the terms. The Voss would submit to genetic modification that would remove their all-consuming hunger. They would withdraw from all conquered territories. They would live under human supervision for a century. "This is death of what we are," said the Overmind. "It's evolution," countered Tae-sung. "Forced, yes, but evolution nonetheless. The alternative is extinction." The alien eyes seemed to study him. "Why, offer choice? You could destroy now. Because despite what you may think, we are not monsters," said Tae-sung. "We do what is necessary for survival, but no more than that." "Time to consider. You have 1 hour," said Tae-sung. "Then we deploy the weapon." As the transmission ended, Du-young turned to the Admiral. "You're really giving them a choice after everything they've done?" "We're not like them," Tae-sung replied. "We don't destroy simply because we can." "The IT Terry would argue differently," muttered Sun Mi. Tae-sung's gaze hardened. "We are not monsters," he told his staff when questioned, "but we will become them temporarily if that's what survival requires." The hour passed in tense silence. Then, with just minutes to spare, the Overmind responded. They accepted the terms. Within days, teams of human scientists began the delicate process of altering Voss biology. It would take years to complete, but the war was effectively over. The predators that had terrorized this sector of space for millennia were being domesticated. On Terris Prime, a very different scene was unfolding. A new ship had arrived from Earth, larger, more elegant than the warships, with no visible weapons. From it emerged a delegation unlike the soldiers that Terry had come to know. These humans wore formal attire, carried no weapons, and spoke of cooperation and mutual growth. Ambassador Choi addressed the Terry High Council with a warm smile. "My friends, I bring greetings from Earth. We are honored to formally establish diplomatic relations with your people." Elder Sue looked confused. "But we've had relations with Earth for months now." "You've had military protection," corrected the ambassador gently. "Now we offer true partnership." Later, in a private meeting with the Tyri leadership, Elder Yoon Min-ho asked the question that had been troubling many of his people. "Why send soldiers first? Why not diplomats from the beginning?" Ambassador Choi's expression grew serious. "Earth has learned harsh lessons in its history. When facing an existential threat, you don't begin with words. You ensure survival first, then build bridges. So Admiral Tae-sung and his people were selected specifically for this mission," confirmed Choi. "Earth sent its darkest elements deliberately, keeping its more diplomatic representatives in reserve until the military threat was neutralized." "Some might call that deceptive," said Yoon. "Some might call it pragmatic," replied Choi. "The galaxy is a dangerous place. Earth understands this perhaps better than the Tyri." In the weeks that followed, as human diplomats worked to build lasting relationships with the Tyri, the scarred warships prepared to return home. Their mission complete, the soldiers who had fought the galaxy's first interstellar war would return to an Earth that might not fully understand what they had done here. On the last day, as Admiral Han Tae-sung supervised the final preparations for departure, he found himself approached by Elder Yoon Min-ho. "I wanted to thank you personally," said the Terry leader. "Whatever methods you used, you saved my people from extinction. We will not forget that." Tae-sung nodded. "It was necessary." "But I must ask," continued Yoon, his luminescent skin pulsing with emotion. "You saved us, but at what cost to yourselves? Your people took on the burden of terrible choices so that mine wouldn't have to. I've seen how it weighs on some of your soldiers. For the first time since his arrival, something like genuine emotion flickered across Tai Sung's face. Every warrior knows that when you fight monsters, you risk becoming one yourself. But sometimes, that risk must be taken. And was it worth it? Asked Yun Tai Sung, looked out at the stars visible through the viewport, at the galaxy that now knew of humanity's existence. That isn't for me to decide. History will judge whether what we did here was right. What would you tell other species who might call to Earth for help? Tai Sung's gaze remained fixed on the stars. I would tell them this. The galaxy now knows. Call Earth for help and we'll come. But be careful what you ask for, because Earth will send exactly what's needed, even if it's our darkest wrath. As the Nemesis broke orbit for the long journey home, Sunmi joined Tai Sung on the observation deck. Together they watched as Taris Prime dwindled to a point of light behind them. Do you think we'll ever come back here? She asked. Not us, replied Tai Sung. We were the knife, not the hand that heals. That's for the diplomats now. And what about the Voss? Do you think they can truly change? Tai Sung was silent for a moment. I think when faced with extinction, every species will do whatever it takes to survive, even if that means becoming something entirely new, including humans, asked Sunmi quietly. The Admiral turned from the viewport, his face once again the mask of calm determination that had carried them through the war. Especially humans. Our greatest strength has always been our ability to change, to become whatever we need to be when we need to be it. The stars streaked past as the ship jumped to folded space, carrying Earth's darkest nights home from their first interstellar war, but almost certainly not their last.